Welcome to today's custom-tailored deep dive. If you're joining us online, you already know the semiconductor space is moving, well, faster than almost any other sector right now.
Oh, absolutely. It's moving at light speed at this point.
Yeah, and we've got a really dense stack of sources today to help you navigate it. Everything is dated right around early March 2026.
Right. We are looking at Broadcom's Q1 2026 earnings call transcript, their official financial release, and several really in-depth CNBC analysis articles and video clips.
And the mission for this deep dive is to basically shortcut you to being the most well-informed person in the room regarding this exploding AI hardware market.
Exactly. We want to decode all that dense financial data and, demystify the really highly technical jargon.
Stuff like XPUs, direct-attached copper, and why on earth we're suddenly talking about compute in terms of gigawatts.
Yeah, that gigawatt metric is wild, but it really points to Broadcom's massive sort of under-the-radar strategy here.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this, because the headline we are looking at today is just jaw-dropping. Broadcom is claiming they have a line of sight to over $100 billion in AI chip revenue in 2027 alone.
$100 billion in a single year.
Just from chips.
Yeah.
It's insane. So let's look at the Q1 2026 numbers that actually make that projection believable.
Right, because you have to look at the current baseline.
Exactly. Total revenue just hit a record $19.3 billion. That is up 29% year over year. And net income jumped to $7.35 billion. But the real star of the show, the thing driving the market crazy, is their AI semiconductor revenue. It soared 106% to $8.4 billion for the quarter.
And, what's really astonishing there isn't just the top-line growth, it's the profitability.
Oh, the margins are crazy.
They reported an adjusted EBITDA of $13.1 billion. That is 68% of revenue. Hardware companies are not supposed to have 68% margins.
Right, that's a software margin.
Exactly, and it shows in the cash generation. They just announced a new $10 billion share repurchase program, plus they paid out $3.1 billion in dividends.
So they are swimming in cash. Which brings us back to CEO Hock Tan's mic drop moment on the call, projecting that $100 billion from AI chips in 2027.
And if you look at the JP Morgan analyst notes on this, they conservatively estimate that this equates to somewhere between $12 billion and $15 billion per gigawatt of compute.
Which is a totally new way to measure this stuff. But before we get too deep into the weeds on gigawatts and market projections, I do need to pause and speak directly to you, the listener, for a quick mandatory disclaimer. Shi forserai, shio movie, shiasusyokin, shivizoni, sujelcha. Shushizanik to keep that in mind.
Definitely. So looking at how Broadcom is actually pulling this off.
What's fascinating here is exactly that. Why are they making so much money compared to everyone else?
Right.
It comes down to the shift from general-purpose GPUs to custom XPUs, or AI accelerators.
To put it simply, a GPU is kind of like a Swiss Army knife, right? Exactly. A GPU is designed to do a lot of different parallel processing tasks pretty well. But an XPU is like a specialized scalpel. It is custom-built and hard-coded for specific large language models.
So you strip out all the extra stuff you don't need.
Right, you get rid of the instruction fetch and decode overhead that a GPU needs, and that drastically lowers power consumption and reduces latency.
And Broadcom is basically the premier architect for these custom scalpels. Hock Tan actually outlined 6 strategic customers they are building this custom silicon for.
Yeah, let's run through that roster because it is a who's who of AI.
First up is Google. Broadcom is helping them scale their 7th-gen TPU, and they expect massive demand for the next generation in 2027.
Then there is Meta, and this was a really interesting moment on the call.
Right, because there were all these analyst doubts about Meta's internal chip program.
Exactly, but Hock Tan addressed it directly. He said, Meta's MTIA custom accelerator roadmap is alive and well, and it's scaling to multiple gigawatts in 2027.
Then you have OpenAI. They're deploying their first-generation custom XPU in volume in 2027, over 1 gigawatt's worth.
And Anthropic is moving even faster. They are hitting 1 gigawatt this year in 2026 and surging over 3 gigawatts in 2027.
Now, Broadcom didn't name the final 2 on the call, but CNBC reports that Fujitsu and ByteDance are very likely the remaining 2.
Now, regarding Anthropic, there is a recent geopolitical development in the sources that we need to touch on. And I want to explicitly state to you listening that In discussing this, we are not taking any political sides, nor are we criticizing the government or the company. We are simply reporting the facts from the source material to show the incredibly complex environment these tech companies operate in.
Right. It's a very tricky regulatory tightrope.
Very. So, according to the CNBC reports, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth recently labeled Anthropic a supply chain risk.
Wow.
And President Trump directed government agencies to stop using Anthropic entirely. The stated reason is that Anthropic refused to permit their technology to be used for mass domestic surveillance or autonomous weapons.
But what's crazy is that despite that public sector friction, Broadcom is still projecting gigawatts of demand from Anthropic.
Because the commercial demand is just that overwhelming.
Which brings us back to that word, gigawatts. Broadcom isn't talking about shipping units anymore.
No, they expect to ship close to 10 gigawatts of power capacity by 2027. They're selling compute the way you'd sell output from a power plant.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. You can't just plug 10 gigawatts of chips into a wall and expect them to talk to each other.
Oh, the networking challenge is a nightmare.
Right, which is why Broadcom's AI networking revenue grew 60%. It's soon going to make up 40% of their total AI revenue.
Because you need switches like their Tomahawk 6, which moves data at 100 terabits per second.
And they are already prepping the Tomahawk 7 for 2027 to double that to 200 terabits per second.
And that speed essentially dictates the physical layout of the data center, which brings up the big debate, scaling out versus scaling up.
Copper versus optics.
Exactly. When you scale out, meaning connecting distant clusters across a massive facility, you have to use optical connections. Fiber optics, lasers, all that.
But for scaling up.
For scaling up, which means connecting chips inside a single, tightly packed cluster, Broadcom is pushing hard for direct attach copper or DAC.
Which seems kind of old school, right? Why go with copper when everyone is talking about silicon photonics?
It comes down to physics and cost. Copper is significantly cheaper. It uses way less power because you aren't converting electrical signals into light and then back again.
Right, which means lower latency too.
Exactly. And the market reacted immediately to Hawk Tan confirming this strategy.
Yeah.
Copper connectivity stocks like Amphenol and Credo rallied hard.
While the pure-play optical makers like Lumentum and Coherent actually fell.
It just shows how Broadcom's architectural decisions act as a tidal wave for the rest of the supply chain.
But even with the perfect copper setup, how is Broadcom surviving the TSMC manufacturing bottlenecks? I mean, NVIDIA struggles with that constantly.
Broadcom made some really smart early bets, specifically on glass substrates.
Right, instead of traditional organic base layers.
Exactly. As these AI systems grow, drawing huge amounts of power, organic substrates warp. Glass improves the electrical signals and thermal stability. Plus, Broadcom basically used their massive cash pile to lock up supply for wafers, high bandwidth memory, and these substrates all the way through 2028.
They just walked their way to the front of the line.
Yep.
Which actually led to a pretty funny moment during the Q&A on the earnings call. An analyst was worried that because Broadcom is selling these full integrated racks of equipment now, it would drag down that beautiful 68% gross margin.
Oh yeah, Hawk Tan did not hold back.
He bluntly told the analyst they must be hallucinated.
Hallucinated.
Yeah. He said Broadcom has perfected its yields and costs so well that their AI hardware margins perfectly match their traditional semiconductor business.
And we shouldn't forget that traditional business, by the way, their infrastructure software division still pulled in $6.8 billion this quarter.
Right, because software isn't dead just because AI hardware is booming.
Not at all. VMware Cloud Foundation, or VCF, is essentially the abstraction layer that makes all this hardware usable. It integrates CPUs, GPUs, and networking into a cohesive private cloud. You can't just replace that with raw silicon.
But this raises an important question, doesn't it?
It does. This raises an important question about customer-owned tooling, or COT. If Google and Meta are designing their own chips, what's stopping them from eventually cutting Broadcom out entirely?
Hawk Tan argues that they can't.
Right. Because in this race, good enough isn't good enough. You are competing with NVIDIA's relentless release cycle.
So you need Broadcom's unmatched IP, their advanced packaging.
And their ability to actually manufacture hundreds of thousands of chips with high yields quickly. A hyperscaler can't risk a bad production run.
Especially not now, with the dynamic between training and inference shifting so wildly.
Yeah, that's the bigger picture here. Training an AI model makes it smart. But inference, which is actually using the productized AI in the real world, that is driving a massive, unexpected surge in demand.
So these companies are forced into a corner. They have to design 2 chips simultaneously.
One for training, one for inference.
Because if you wait a year to build your inference chip after your model is done, a rival is already going to have a smarter LLM on the market.
Exactly. The product cycles are overlapping now.
So what does this all mean?
Well,
Broadcom is clearly no longer just a back-end component supplier. They are the foundational architect of the entire AI boom.
definitely. They've secured their supply chains to 2028. They are dominating with these custom XPUs and copper networking solutions.
And they are literally laughing off any margin concerns from analysts.
But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Something that builds on all this.
Yes, here.
We have officially entered an era where computational power is purchased in gigawatts. That is the exact same metric we use to measure the output of nuclear power plants.
Right.
It's industrial scale.
Exactly. So as Broadcom and these 6 massive companies race to build better and smarter AI, the question is no longer just about chip yields. It's about how the global energy grid is actually going to handle this new standard of computing.
That is a massive infrastructure wall we are speeding toward.
It really is.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Kind of CAG.